Awesome. Hello guys, how's everyone doing? So today we're going to talk a little bit about Prague. I was there for 2 full days, 3 nights, and it was definitely the first time I went traveling without anybody else. No companions. I met some people in the hostel that I never really jived with, I would say, completely. And we never ended up hanging out during the days that I spent in Prague. And I spent such a short period of time there that I really didn't get a chance to meet anyone for a prolonged period of time and get comfortable in the city. So I spent the other 2 days alone, like didn't talk to many people. I remember I had my headphones and I definitely listened to a lot of music on my own and went for a lot of nice walks in the city. The time I spent there, it was the nicest weather. And so I do personally think Prague's a little bit overrated, but there's definitely lots to see. I mean, the 2 days I spent there, I did get a lot of exposure to the culture of Czech Republic and kind of more, I guess that was one of the more eastern countries I got to go check out on my own and see what the history and the arts and the culture and all that jazz was about. Jazz, like more on the jazz later. So basically, I think the first day I spent, I followed the receptionist advice to go kind of the longer route into town and walk through the park that oversees the whole city while going into the city, and that was really spectacular. I mean, I remember I walked up and I got a little bit lost originally and I felt a little bit out of place because it wasn't like the most touristy path to be taking, but at the same time it was absolutely gorgeous. It was more the local route of getting into the city, and just hanging out on this cliffside, slowly walking along, reading my book, meditated once or twice. Took me an hour or two to get into the city because I took my time. Usually it would only have taken 30 minutes, 45 minutes tops. And as I walked along the ridge, you know, there's a whole castle and things that you can see on the far side of Prague. So I went and checked that out, and that was all very spectacular, that Eastern architecture, and very dark in the sense of like weren't a lot of colors I found in the things that were being built, but it all was very intricate and everything had its own purpose. So kind of did a tour up in there and then eventually crossed the bridge and got a chance to see the John Lennon wall, which is there because obviously, for those of you who don't know it, but John Lennon, former member of the Beatles, never performed in Prague because during the political duress that happened, or it was happening in the late 90s, mid-90s, 1900s, during the World Wars, there was not a lot of safety for these artists to come in, even though they had a large fan base there. So yeah, that was basically the first thing I did. I think from here I just want to read a little bit out of my journal, which is something I haven't really been doing lots in these blog posts, but I thought, you know, this might be a good spot for it. So after the morning of the park and the castle, I headed down to the city center across the pedestrian bridge that many of the caricature artists on display at work. So there was a bunch of these artists that, you know, draw your caricature, your cartoon in the city with the bridges and all that fun stuff, and a whole bridge of it. Literally, there's no cars, no motorcycles, no nothing, which is a pedestrian bridge you could walk across. And I walked aimlessly into the afternoon through the city and center and surrounding neighborhoods, taking photos of the ornate buildings and towers, because everything there, every single building was different. Like every single building had its own architecture. That was the one thing that was absolutely just phenomenal and fascinating about Prague. It was so beautiful that they didn't want to bomb it in the World Wars. Makes sense. You look at it now, it's like, wow, you know, this is old architecture, and it's a lot of it, and it goes on for a long time. Like, I walked aimlessly and took photos, like I said, and photos you'll be able to check out. And so the next thing I went through, and then I decided to go into a communist museum, which I found very informative because I learned that the Czechs didn't want the government and were largely manipulated into believing it would benefit them even after the cracks started to show. There was also a section of the North Korea which I found profoundly disturbing. So this was kind of like the communist museum for them. There was a whole section on North Korea's communism, which was crazy. I mean, I watched some Vice documentaries and whatnot about the North Korean situation, and this stuff was fairly up to date, and I think communism as a whole is something that a lot of people get very touchy about, which I find interesting because I think most of the time communism comes into play, like he's saying here, in the in the Prague Museum at least of communism. It talked about how the Czech republics didn't really understand what was going on. They thought, obviously there were some people who knew that this wasn't good for them, but there were other people who were led to believe that this communism would lead to a better future, and it really didn't. It was absolutely corrupt. The officers, lived in luxury, and the people didn't. And people in power lived in luxury or in abundance, and the people below that line, or just the standard people, did not. And it was just a shame to kind of see this happen. And you could walk through the timeline. I mean, I didn't actually see it happen, but you just walk through the timeline of how it happened, and you read all the stories. And I spent about an hour reading every word there was to read in that place. And it was just shocking to see what communism can do. But I also don't think that, it's as bad as everyone makes it out to be. Obviously, I think there's human nature that comes into the communist political system that you don't fully weigh in the political side of things. Again, I'm not a poli-sci major, so I'm just shooting out my blatant opinion, which I'm sure is wrong widely. But anyways, the next day, the second day, I did the same thing, walked and listened to music and read my book while taking photos. And I saw the Charles Bridge, Kappa Island, and the Bohemian Jazz Festival, the John Lennon Wall, like we talked about, and the Old Town Square. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what the Bohemian Jazz Festival was like. So I was just kind of walking around, and all of a sudden there's this big structure and whatnot in the middle of the Old Town Square, and I was like, this is cool. Like reading signs and whatever. I go, Bohemian Jazz Festival. Like, I like jazz, so I got a chance to kind of like go back, sit back at one of these bars, and grab a Pilsner, and they put me right at the front of the restaurant, or the back of the restaurant, I guess, right where the stage was. And I was sitting there alone, obviously, drinking the Pilsner that comes from Prague in Czech Republic. Obviously, that's where the Pilsner is most known, and where it came from. So I felt very in the culture in the moment. Bohemian Jazz Festival going on beside me, and drinking the Pilsner beer, and just really enjoying the time I had alone in that environment and that culture, because I really got to soak myself into it, and see really what it was like to live in Prague. And you could just see there was a lot of people who socialized in these environments, and there wasn't a lot of nature, which isn't bad necessarily, but it's just something I noticed, that a lot of these people do a lot of mingling in the cities and in the parks and whatnot. It was a beautiful, clean city at the end of the day that I would recommend most people go and check out for its ornate buildings and just its sheer beauty. It is beautiful there, no doubt about it. So that was kind of the big things that I did in Prague. The last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was on my second day I went for a walk, and so there was a piano that was just sitting there, one of these public pianos. I'm sure you might have one in your community or not, where people can come and just play the piano in a public space. And there was this piano there, and this man sitting there. He was a middle-aged 20-year-old boy who looked like he was from Prague, to be honest, and turns out later on he wasn't. But so he sat down, and I sat down close to him, and he started playing. And I was like, this is pretty good. Like, he's actually really good. And he played and played and played, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 minutes went on, and eventually a crowd started to kind of start behind him, and the whole time he was just playing the piano, not looking behind him at all. And I found that quite amazing, that he just loved the piano so much that he just didn't care. He really didn't even see the people in his peripherals, it seemed. And then eventually he stopped playing, and everyone started to clap. And I was like, this guy has no idea you guys are there. Like, I was here when it was just him and me and this one other lady that has already gone. And he looks around and he's like, wow, like, he's just taken aback by the situation. And I thought, that was so cool to see, like, the pure joy of him playing the piano, and the pure joy of people listening. And people started handing him euros, and he was like, I can't take it. I'm not a professional, blah, blah, blah. And people were like, the locals were insisting. He was actually a tourist as well. He was just stopping by and just thought he would play some piano because he hadn't played the piano in a while. And I think the funny thing is, you look at the pure joy that he had and the love he had for the piano. And then meanwhile, there was a Korean family that was close by with a daughter. And after he played, the Korean family, they were Korean, they were South Korean, and they forced her, this daughter who was 12, 13, to play the piano after him, and she didn't want to because she knew like this man had just done something amazing and marvelous, and she was sat there and didn't have that desire to play the piano. She was a good pianist, and I'm sure when she has the desire to play the piano, she is a very phenomenal pianist. But at the moment, she was forced by her parents, who could see the situation unraveling, to go up there and play, and she started to play and play and play, and eventually 4 minutes later, she stopped playing, and she just got up and walked away with her parents, and it wasn't the same as this other boy who just naturally wanted the sheer desire to play the piano, and the different results that come from those two aspects. I thought that was a life lesson I learned in Prague that I won't ever forget. Like, it saw it right in front of my eyes. Like, this boy wanted and desired to play the piano so badly that he just gave it everything he had, and there he was, loving life, enjoying the moment, and others were enjoying the moment with him. And then on the other side, there's this Korean family who's forcing this child to go up there and play, and in the meantime, the crowd is becoming disengaged, and seconds into the performance of this little girl, like, people just started walking away because I think they felt awkward, and there was this tension in the air, and that was just something very fascinating to see, that transfers across all cultures and all human beings. So I just thought I would share that story with you guys. That was something that I definitely want to talk about in Prague, on top of the fact that I got to spend a lot of time alone thinking about that and other things in Prague. It was really meditative and finding myself a spot, as much as I didn't have the beautiful weather and all the spectacular company and people to conversate with. I think the alone time I spent for 2 days was quite humbling, and I really started to realize how lucky I was to come up and be grown in a certain family and many other things. So I just thought I would share that with you guys. And if you guys have any questions, don't feel free to drop a comment. I hope you guys do enjoy Prague if you guys are going to Prague, and I hope you guys are enjoying these stories that I'm sharing with you guys. At the end of the day, I'm doing this for my friends, my family, and for myself, my future, so people can get to know me a little bit better. So I hope you guys enjoyed that episode on Prague, and I'll see you guys next time.